Good morning, Malta and Gozo, and welcome to another edition of Lovin Daily. I'm your host, Chris Peregrine, today joined by Tim Diacono, editor of Lovin Malta. How are you, Tim?
How's it going, Chris? Not bad.
Good. It's our midweek edition, and these are our headlines of the day. So, first of all, Malta has failed to get EU funding for our offshore harbour cruise detention centres that came to an end a couple of days ago. We'll talk about Black Lives Matter protester who triggered Malta with a cheeky slogan. Nationalist Party is going to be boycotting the grilling of nominated police commissioner. I want to know your thoughts on that, Tim. Tensions rising between employees and employers in post-COVID return to work, and Maltese families still left in the dark on when they can visit loved ones in hospital. So let's start with the first story, Tim. Malta did not manage to get any EU funding for those Captain Morgan cruises holding 425 migrants for about 40 days. What do you make of that?
That's right, Chris. So obviously, throughout the time where these migrants were being kept by Malta on private boats just outside our waters at quite a heavy cost to the Maltese government, which was estimated to be at least €3,000 per ship, and there were 4 ships, so that's €12,000 a day. The Prime Minister kept saying that it doesn't matter because the European Union is going to foot the bill. He said this as recently as Monday during his latest press conference, and has been saying this throughout. Fair enough. However, yesterday, the EU spokesperson for the European Commission put a spanner in the works and said that actually they will not fund this because, first of all, the Maltese government didn't specify exactly how much money it needs and for what, and it also said that all legal conditions must be met, so kind of implying that they were not met in this case. So it doesn't qualify for EU aid. So this means that taxpayers are going to have to pay for this mission, which ultimately still resulted in the migrants being brought to Malta anyway.
Yeah.
Quite a way.
So, yeah, I think first of all, we still need to establish how much money was spent, because although there's this idea of €3,000 a day, we don't know if that included the private security people who the Prime Minister wanted to protect when the migrants allegedly had become started to protest to go back to Malta. So there's that question which needs to be said. There's also the question of whether Malta is in a position right now to be negotiating properly with the EU. So it seems to be that we've got some we don't seem to be doing this very well. Judging by the EU statement, it seems that we didn't even apply for these funds correctly. Now, it's interesting that 2 days ago, Malta fired the Foreign Affairs Minister, Boris Bartolo, fired our Brussels ambassador, Daniel Azzopardi. So that could be a sign that maybe people that maybe the government is not happy with his performance in relation to these sort of issues. So we need to see what that means and whether Malta is going to be able to create a credible relationship with the EU on migration, which so far doesn't seem to have happened. And also, it must be said that this news item has sparked a lot of anti-EU sentiment in general. We had people like Tony Zarp, for the past few days calling for a Malta exit from the EU, and I think it's really important that the Prime Minister starts to manage that sentiment, because ultimately this is a very important situation for Malta to be in the EU and to be, as Costa Navarra said, Malta benefits more, and even Everest Bartolo said, Malta benefits more from being in the EU than outside of it, even when it comes to migration.
Unfortunately, whenever EU issues come into play, and we've not just in Malta, but many places, and your country fails to win, instead of asking yourself, what could we have done better? Could we have negotiated better? who have adopted a different strategy. It's like blame the EU and and let's leave the EU. I think it's a bit very, simplistic argument, to be honest. But
Okay, so move on to the second story, quite a controversial one. So yesterday, photos were published on Lovin Malta of Black Lives Matter protester who had quite a cheeky slogan. His slogan was, if I go, I will miss white pussy. And, some people took that with a pinch of salt and saw the element of humor in it. And others got very, very angry, particularly the sort of all lives matter, anti-migrant, anti-illegal immigrant groups started to share these photos and accuse, black people of wanting to come to rape our women and all of this sort of stuff. And as that, sentiment started to take off on Facebook, the other camp, a lot of the Black Lives Matter protesters were saying that this photo is fake and clearly photoshopped and showing how it was photoshopped, etc., instead of, defending the lightness of it, I guess. And I think that's quite an interesting thing that happened on social media yesterday. The photo is not fake, by the way. It was actually taken by one of our journalists at the protest. But it has sparked controversy, and I think it's a bit of a reminder as well to protesters that when you do whatever slogan you do take to a protest like this could be isolated and taken as a reflection of all the rest. There are a lot of issues around a slogan like this because it goes back to the, I guess, sexualization of black men and it kind of plays into that narrative, even though I interpreted it as a sense of irony and kind of mocking that sentiment. How did you interpret it?
So first of all, yes, as you said, it was real, not photoshopped. I'm quite amazed at how some people delved into this photo and tried to find, justify, the ways that it could have been photoshopped, and it wasn't. But ultimately, the way I see it is, it was a joke. This guy was clearly joking. He was clearly like having a good time, and he had this, funny poster. I mean, humor is relative, but he clearly saw it as a joke. There was no. By saying that, he was by no means saying like, I'm going to rape all your women, as some people misinterpreted it as saying. And I honestly think that sometimes we just really need to learn to get a sense of humor, stop taking things so seriously, stop getting triggered, by something that we might slightly disagree with, and stop, spewing out hatred and generalizations when you see a sign like that. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and also it emerged I think today as well that the All Lives Matter people who picketed the Black Lives Matter protest was not given didn't have a permit. So we were criticizing yesterday on Lovin Daily the person who gave these two rival permits, but it seems that there weren't actually two permits. There was one for Black Lives Matter and the others just kind of picketed it. We're going to say something.
Yes. I mean, there were also quite a lot of hateful comments against Maltese women who had attended the Black Lives Matter protest, basically saying, you should get raped by a few black men. And to be honest, I'm quite surprised how the slogan generated more controversy than that. Just literal rape threats and saying you deserve to be raped in public using your full name, no shame whatsoever.
Ironic that the people warning of rapes are also the people wishing rapes on others. But anyway, let's move on to the next story, Tim. The PN boycotting the grilling of nominated police commissioner Angelo Gaffa.
Yes. So Malta is going to get a new police commissioner soon, Angelo Gaffa, and for the first time ever, before the police commissioner gets appointed, he will be subjected to a a parliamentary committee grilling. So that basically means that MPs from both government and opposition will have a chance to ask him questions about what he intends to do in the police force, and then it will be passed on to a final vote where he will be confirmed as as police commissioner. Now, the opposition has decided not to participate in this grilling. Its reason is that the process, while better than it used to be, where the Prime Minister used to just select the person he wanted as commissioner, it still gives the Prime Minister too many powers. Basically, it won't require a 2/3 majority to confirm the new commissioner in Parliament. So the government can still, at the end of the day, choose the person it wants. And the opposition is saying that if we participate in this grilling process, it will be interpreted as a sign that we agree with the process. But I think it's a really stupid argument, to be honest, because you can disagree with the process, you can vote against him, he can still be confirmed, but the grilling process is important because you'll be able to ask, this guy will be in the hot seat, and you'll be able to ask him any questions you like pertaining to the police. And there's a lot of questions to ask. So there's questions about the former police commissioner, Lawrence Kotayar, who we recently found out had actually tipped off the friend of Melvin Toma that the police knew about Melvin Toma's secret recordings, and then this guy actually went to Melvin Toma with that information. We had those interviews with two suspended traffic police officers who were alleging widespread abuse within the police force. And now we have someone, Angelo Ghaffar, who, it has to be said, is an establishment candidate. He was a CEO for a number of years. And but still, you have a chance to ask him questions. You have a chance to raise even these concerns that perhaps Conrad Mizzi might have returned to Malta, and you have a chance to ask him these questions, and you're bowing out of it.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that the Nationalist Party has discounted Angelo Ghaffar completely at the outset. I don't know if they've explained this properly yet, and or given reasons why. But I don't think Angelo Ghaffar has too many scandals. Obviously, he was in the police force, and as you said, he's an establishment candidate because he was chosen as the CEO of the police force, and maybe that. So any kind of things that the police didn't do over the past few years can be partly his responsibility as well. Yesterday as well, people like Jason Asapardi of the Nationalist Party were saying that former tourism minister Conrad Mizzi was able to return back to Malta with impunity because of Angelo Ghaffar being nominated as police commissioner. And again, they're kind of, yes, Conrad Mizzi did return to Malta yesterday after months-long absence, where he apparently was sick and stayed in the UK. The coincidental timing is suspicious. And I think this boils down to sort of my point on this thing. I agree with you, Tim, that the Nationalist Party is probably better off being present at the grilling and asking tough questions. And I'm sure journalists would love to take their place if they're going to renounce that opportunity. But I think my point is, the Prime Minister and the Cabinet were given two names by the selection board, two names of people who are good enough to become police commissioner, and it seems that Cabinet chose the person who's more establishment and the person who's more controversial, the person who's not going to be accepted by the Nationalist Party. And while I think this is a process, it is what it is, I think when you realize that the police is in such a state of mistrust, people don't trust Malta's police force, and you can understand why. We've had 7 commissioners in 7 years. We've had police commissioners and assistant and deputy commissioners who have done some really suspicious things. Not enough action being taken on clear criminal activity. So I think what the government should have done is chosen a candidate who is going to get the support of the opposition party, and instead seems to have chosen one of the few candidates who absolutely wouldn't have gotten this whether it's fair or not, whether it's fair or not to Mr. Gaffa. We're running out of time, so let's move on to the other two stories that we've got for today, COVID related. So first of all, tensions are rising between employers and employees as this post-COVID return to work is happening. So yesterday we had a story where some employees spoke to us about how they're feeling that they're being forced to go back to work and they're still not sure if it's safe to do so. Employers are getting quite fed up because they're saying, we need to get back to business, remote working isn't working well enough. Although there are a number of companies and employers who are still happy with the remote working situation, adapting to that in the long term. We spoke to a management consultant as well who made it clear that what employers should be doing and employees should be doing is maintaining the highest levels of hygiene to make sure that COVID doesn't spread in the office and you end up having to leave work all over again. Tim, I want to know what you think about that, but I also want you to move on to the other story about Maltese families.
Yes. So basically, the government has made its stance very clear in terms of the COVID-19 crisis, which is that we're in a new phase now, which is a phase of management and not of emergency. So even though we're technically still in a state of emergency, people are being allowed to gather in large numbers. We saw the protests, we saw people in Parcherville. People are, all businesses are opening, gyms have reopened, restaurants have reopened, the airport's going to reopen in a few weeks. And yes, businesses are being encouraged to start to start operating again, and that means people have to start working again. Now, the reality also is that while remote working is perfectly fine for some companies, for some jobs, it is way trickier for others, and it does come with its own set of problems that can be resolved by moving back to the office. And if the official advice now is not to stay at home, but to regenerate the economy and to start returning to, we say the new normal, but even that, the Prime Minister stopped talking about that. It's the whole normal now, but that's the message. Then I understand why. I understand why employers are requiring their staff to return to the office, obviously with new measures in place to prevent the spread of the virus. And in another COVID-related story, while, like I said, everyone is being allowed to reopen slowly, there are certain segments of society who are still being, still at a complete disadvantage as a result of the restrictions, none more so than families who aren't allowed to see their loved ones at hospital. Now, I understand that this is a tricky situation because the people in hospital are literally the most vulnerable. So you want to make sure that they don't catch COVID-19. However, there's also a very serious human reality, which is that people are being denied the right to see their loved ones in a very vulnerable state. I mean, perhaps they could even be on their deathbeds, and you're not even going to be allowed to say goodbye to them, which is extremely serious. And we spoke to a woman yesterday who hasn't seen her grandfather for the past few months. Not only hasn't she seen him, but hasn't been able to speak to him because he cannot speak. So the only way of they can communicate to him is through their nurse for months. Now, this just sounds completely inhumane. And sure, there are risks associated with COVID-19, but there are also other risks associated with basic humanity as well that the health authorities should really take into account.
Thanks for that, Tim. Yesterday as well, we had 2 new cases of COVID-19 registered, with much fewer tests than usual, and we had 1 recovery. So we'll wait to see today's numbers, how they're looking, and we'll keep following and keep you updated on lovindaily.com. That's all we've got for you today. I've been Chris Perugine, joined by Tim Diacono. Have a day full of loving.